The Life and Times of Tommy Kaos. My name is Tommy Kaos, and this is my story. I've been called a lot of names throughout this life. Bastard, son of a bitch, asshole, pissant, little shit, and piece of shit, to name a few. The events are real, but I've changed all the names in this story to protect the innocent, as well as the guilty. It was a very rough life by any normal standards, but it was what it was. I'm telling my story the only way I know how. Raw, dirty, and gritty, just like I lived and breathed it. I don't blame anyone for my fuck-ups. I landed in the life that the roll of the proverbial dice gave me is all I can figure. I'm still trying to figure it out to this day. It's been a very bumpy ride, but most of all, very chaotic. With that said, enjoy it as best you can. Tommy Kaos. Chapter 1. I was born the first child of a 19-year-old girl who had no real aspirations other than to party her ass off. She's a 6-foot Amazon with auburn hair, big bones, and a mean streak fitting for a man. Her favorite pastimes were drinking, dancing, and fucking. That's Mom. As the story goes, she got pregnant by some dumbass schmuck who got drafted into Vietnam's war and left her with a belly full of me. He wasn't in a month before he got himself killed, and she wasn't wasting time waiting on him or his funeral. She latched onto another poor fool and claimed he was the daddy. Cheryl wanted to be taken care of, and Tom was the fool picked for the job. They settled down in a tiny one-bedroom mobile home on the side of a red clay dirt hill in Hildebrand, North Carolina. Yes, I'm a hillbilly kid. The trailer was old, worn out, and well used. The yard was patchy with red patches everywhere, very messy. It was situated on the side of a hill with a steep incline. Another trailer was sitting at the bottom of the hill. Around the bend was a warehouse kind of looking building that had some sort of furniture sales inside. I never went inside, but I got a good look through the door once. My first real memory of anything worth discussing was total chaos. I woke to Mom screaming, "You killed my baby, you son of a bitch!" My mom had given birth to a little girl a couple months before. Her name was Tammy. I remember her somewhat as a beautiful little dark-haired baby. My other sibling is May. She's 3 years younger than me. I was asleep in a little hallway leading to the only bedroom. It wasn't a bed or a bedroom I was sleeping on. It was more like a wooden shelf or a trunk with a cushion on top. It was just big enough to fit on it. I was 5 years old at the time. As I said, I woke to Mom yelling at Dad saying he killed her baby. Being 5 years old, I had no idea what being killed meant, but by the screams and crying, I knew it wasn't good. I sat up in my makeshift bed and looked to my right to see Mom sitting up in bed, rocking my baby sister, Tammy, in her arms. Mom was crying and shaking her head as if to say, "No, this can't be happening." I got out of bed and my dad told me to go into the living room with my sister and my cousin Pee-wee. He was spending the night on our sofa. I bet he wished he'd stayed home that night. I went to the living room and stood beside Pee-wee and May, all the while watching that back bedroom and my mom rocking back and forth with my baby sister. My dad had left the trailer to go call an ambulance and God knows who else. He came back and stood by the bed with Mom until we heard a car pull in the driveway. It was my 6'7" grandfather, Henry, and he came in the door with a very large, shiny handgun. When Mom seen him, she started screaming anew. Grandpa raced into the bedroom and pointed the gun at my dad. From what I could see, because my grandpa was blocking the door, my dad was opening the back door that exited in the bedroom. As he was running through it, my grandpa fired the gun. I never saw my dad again. I heard he survived the shot and ran like hell with half an ear missing. Grandpa was close to killing him, that's for sure. I found out later on why my mom kept screaming, "You killed my baby," at my dad, and why my grandpa shot at him. Dad came in drunk, and Tammy was on the crib in the living room crying. Dad put Tammy in the bed with Mom so he could continue drinking in the living room. After he finished drinking, he climbed into bed and apparently rolled over top of Tammy and smothered her to death. Mom said she heard a whimpering and noticed Tammy's arm stuck under Dad. She pulled Tammy out from under him and Tammy was dead. That's when Mom started screaming. What a sad way to start a collection of memories. But it was what it was. The life and times of Tommy Kaos. Please continue and enjoy the madness. Memories of that time come in bits and pieces. I'm sure it's because of the chaos happening before a 5-year-old's eyes. So please forgive me for skipping some of the mundane parts to keep the story going. We moved into Grandma and Grandpa's house in Hickory, North Carolina, not far from Hildebrand. Shortly after we attended the funeral for Tammy, Mom disappeared. At the funeral home, I seen my sister in the tiny casket and didn't know why. Everyone told me she was with Jesus, but I didn't know who that was, especially because I could see her lying there and didn't see any Jesus anywhere. My Uncle DJ burst out crying because of my questions and kicked a huge hole in a door. Everyone had to try and calm him down. I was still confused. The next memory was of the burial. We were at my grandmother's church and Tammy was in her casket at the front. I remember hearing thunder outside and watching everyone's head turn to look out the windows. When the thunder died down, everyone looked expectantly at the door. In came Mom and a bunch of long-haired, bearded bikers. This was my first encounter with the Outlaws Motorcycle Club. As they strode towards the front of the church, Mom leading, my grandpa and his 4 large sons stood up and blocked their path. Mom said she wanted to see her baby, but Grandpa told her she was drunk and she'd better leave. One of the bikers said something and Grandpa pointed at him and told him he needed to leave too. After a few seconds of a standoff, Mom and the Outlaws left. Tammy was buried behind the church in a tiny cemetery plot. I felt some sort of loss, but wasn't certain what kind it was. I just knew my little sister was placed in the ground, and my mom and dad were missing from my life. But I had Grandpa and Grandma, so I felt safe. Sometime in the near future, Mom came back to Grandpa's house. She was very drunk. I had just come home from elementary school to see her seated in a chair near the kitchen. Mom called to me, but Grandpa stopped me from going to her. He was standing in front of her with Grandma next to him. Mom was crying and swaying in the chair. Grandpa asked her how she could just leave her kids and go off to party with a bunch of bikers. And Mom said, "Fuck you! I'll do what I want to." Grandpa slapped her with a huge right hand. Mom fell out of the chair and was out cold. I started crying. Yeah, I know, little baby. Give me a break. I was 5. Anyway, Grandpa picked Mom up and sat her back in the chair. He woke her up and asked her again, "Are you going to grow up and be a mother to the 2 children you do have?" Mom said, "Fuck," and got knocked out again. Grandpa didn't even wait for her to finish the statement. Grandma told him that was enough, and they put Mom to bed. Chapter 2. After a short period of time, Mom settled down and we moved to a crappy apartment. It was an upstairs apartment in an old run-down house owned by an old lady. I don't remember much about the place because I was still just trying to take in all of the new experiences I had to deal with. One minute, I'm living in a trailer, and the next minute, my world turned upside down and I'm shuffled all over the place, witnessing all sorts of crazy stuff. I was a quiet kid at that age, partly because I was afraid of getting beaten, but mostly it was me observing my surroundings and the actions of people in it. Being 5 years old, you can't process too much, but you can see what's good or bad. I was surrounded by bad. Living in the new apartment wasn't much of an adventure for me. Mom made me stay indoors most of the time, and I had to watch my sister, who was 2 years old. Mom would go out at all hours and leave us alone or with some poor neighbor kid. It wasn't long before Thunder came home. I remember sleeping on a sofa with May at the other end, and our babysitter sleeping in a chair when we were wakened by the noise. The babysitter looked outside and said, "Oh my God." She came to the sofa and sat between us as the side of the house started shaking due to all the people coming up the old ragged stairs along the side of the house. Mom was the first to enter, then a whole lot more men and women came in behind her. I don't know how many people came in, but it was more than a dozen, and they were here to party hard. They were all bikers, and I remember the crossed pistons and the outlaw insignia on the back of their jean and leather vests and jackets. Mom had on one too. The babysitter ran out of the door, crying and upset, so I was left to hold May while they partied all around us. Mom was somewhere in the apartment, but I don't remember seeing her much. I don't remember how much time passed before the living room door opened up and there stood Grandpa with my Uncle Jimmy. They both had guns in their hands, and they were pissed off. We ran to them, and they put us behind them, and they called out for Mom. Mom came staggering out of the back bedroom, barely dressed. She was cussing mad to see Grandpa and walked right up to him, only to get knocked out by a huge right jab to the nose. The bikers started to raise a fuss until Grandpa leveled his gun at some guy's head. Grandpa told all of them that he was leaving with me and my sister and would kill anyone who tried to stop him. Nobody said anything as we were led down the stairs and put into Grandpa's car. I remember feeling excited after what I had just seen. When we got back to Grandpa's house, we were put to bed. I went to sleep knowing I was safe once again. Sometime later, either a few days or a couple of weeks, Mom came to get us. And she showed up with some dude that must have said something stupid to Grandpa because Grandpa hit him in the face and the dude collapsed in the front yard. Mom went screaming obscenities at Grandpa and he knocked her out too. I knew by seeing him hit other people that I never wanted him to hit me. Grandpa led us into the house and closed the door. I watched out the living room window until the dude woke up, got Mom up, and they left. It was quite a while before I saw her again. During this time, Grandpa and I became close. He was my best friend, and I loved him greatly. He'd take me to school, which was only 4 blocks away, and then he'd be waiting for me after school. We'd go to Lake Hickory, and he'd teach me how to fish. On the weekends, he taught me how to mow the yard and work in the garden. Saturday mornings were the most special because we'd watch Worldwide Wrestling together. He'd sit in his favorite white chair, and I'd sit on the floor between his legs. We'd watch wrestling, and I'd grab his legs and bite him as he'd twist my hand and pulled my hair to get me to squeal. We'd even roll around on the floor, and he'd let me try some wrestling moves on him. Those times were the happiest, sanest moments of my life. He was my role model, my best friend, my grandpa.